to go on a quest for the trooper hat.
We just inspire each other because you're inspiring me right now. I love it.
That's life.
It is. It is.
That is not what I want.
You guys all look so sharp. I'm like,
I think we might be live.
You have the bottles. That's all you need, Carlo.
I've got the wine opener
Yes.
as well, which I'm happy to report.
Guys, guess what? It happened. Welcome. This is so cool. I've never done it this way. Well, welcome everyone to this very special live stream. I am Amanda McCrossan. As those of you on YouTube are watching already know, but since this is the future, we're able to do this in 2 places at once with 3 people who are in 3 places at once. So welcome to the Jetsons, y'all. I am here with Eduardo Dingler from Wine Access. Eduardo, what's your deal? Who are you? Tell the good people.
Well, I just happen to have a lot of fun and drink a lot of wine, just along the line make a lot of great friends like you guys and get to share with the world. So that's what I do. My title, which is just the title, is Vice President of Wine for Wine Access. But we're all here talking about Carlo and his project, so I'm super excited about this.
Yeah, Carlo, we're super excited to have you. Where are you joining us from?
So I am in Piemonte, Italy, in one of the 11 villages of Barolo known as Diano d'Alba. It's actually one of the villages that splits the DOCG of Barolo and kind of the Langhe region. And I'm on the Langhe side of it. So close but far.
Drinking all the Nebbiolo and having all the fun. And it's not quite truffle season, but I imagine that you can probably still find them, right?
Yeah, you could find, actually there's the summer truffles, like black truffles, but the one that everyone anticipates, the white truffles, come kind of right around, I guess, Thanksgiving for us, but post-harvest. And yeah, it's Nebbiolo, one of my all-time favorite varieties. I tend to like more delicate ethereal varieties, Pinot Noir, Nebbiolo, but the pairing of truffles and Nebbiolo is one of the all-time best. And so it's always anticipated and waited, and people travel from far.
It's a reward at the end of the tunnel.
It is. Yeah, it really is. Yeah.
Carlo, tell us a little bit about
Are you there for business or pleasure? Sorry, Eduardo.
Oh, that's go ahead.
I'm here for a little bit of both. I came here originally for pleasure, just for my love of the area. I had been here with Sir Lucero and a number of friends. We came on just a kind of a trip of sommeliers and winemakers, just because we're so mad about this area, Barbaresco, Barolo, Piemonte, Roero, and Nebbiolo, and the food here. And then about 3 years ago, I met the love of my life, and she's an Italian winemaker. She has a winery here in Barolo, in La Mora, called Agricola Brandini. And so I come here to help her. I have been coming here to help her with her harvests. After Raen is done, we press, we barrel down. Thankfully, we're an early ripening variety in the world of grape varieties. And so I'm normally able to press, barrel down, put in fermentation bungs, and fly here and help her with her harvest. And recently we bought a little vineyard together, and now we're farming a little vineyard together. So I'm here for a little bit of both right now. It's lovely. It's beautiful here right now.
Super exciting. That's awesome. Let's talk about Raen a little bit. So definitely a big focus, one of our all-time favorite Pinot Noirs, and some you started with your brother. And talk about a little bit of the inspiration and how did you come across this amazing vineyard sources?
Thank you, Eduardo. That means a lot. I know you drink some of the best wine, so thank you for that. Yeah, so Dante and I began Raen, inspired a lot by the Pinot Noirs that my father and my grandfather were making in the 60s and 70s. My family may be more known for Cabernet because that's really what Napa Valley does best, a little warmer. But as you get closer to the coast, or even when you get closer to San Pablo Bay, it's quite cool. In fact, on the true Sonoma Coast where our vineyards are with Raen, we're cooler than Burgundy many vintages, especially recently with climate change. It's been the last few vintages. And so great retention of acidity, freshness, vibrancy. And so we began Raen in 2013, inspired a great deal by the Pinot Noirs my father and grandfather were making. My father was a crazy Pinot Noir guy, crazy Burgundy guy as well. He had become friends with, Henri Jaillet, with Gerard Potel, the generation before, one the D-stem side and one the father of whole cluster, or the godfather of whole cluster of that generation. And that being Gerard Potel of Opus One. And he was deeply in love with Pinot Noir and the pursuit of it, and made a very small amount of it at Robert Mondavi. And then in 2004, when we sold, my father, Tim, my grandfather, Robert, and my aunt became Continuum, and we stopped making anything but that wine. And I had gone to college in France, worked in Burgundy, my brother Sonoma Coast, so the edge where you can achieve set and ripen fruit. And so we've been having the time of our lives out there, and what I really consider to be some of the great Pinot Noir holdings in the world of Pinot Noir, and we're fortunate to work with them.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned from a winemaking standpoint, what are you doing differently in Sonoma that maybe your father and grandfather were doing in Napa Valley?
I mean, so all of our hills, the hills where they were in deep clay bay loam soils, in the Carneros area, so the cooler area of Napa Valley, down close by the San Pablo Bay. Where we are also on steep hillside sites, but we're much closer to the ocean, so even cooler. I think that as a whole, Dante and I fell in love with whole cluster. My father had he said that the Robert Mondavi Pinot Noirs up until 82, many of them were over 50% whole cluster. We fell in love with whole bunches, and we've kind of committed to being a domain that almost every vintage is north of 75%, between 75 and 100% whole cluster. And we fell in love with that because of the aromatic lift, the rose petal, the tea, the beautiful retention of fruit and flower that whole cluster can offer. And I think that, we've learned so much about fermentation and extraction. I think my father's generation really was the generation of how can we progress fermenting? Cool fermenting, warm fermenting. Do we punch it down all the time? Do we pump it over? We've learned now, I think, the biggest thing that I hope that my generation can contribute to in wine, being all of my fellow winemakers, myself, is farming. We've really focused on winemaking for the last, I'd say, 50 years in the science of winemaking. And now I think we really understand it quite well. There's still a tremendous amount we don't fully understand. But farming is the area where I think that we can contribute to and kind of correct the creative shift that has been taking place with all the different chemical industries that have been pushing that kind of whole world into farming. The post-World War I and World War II Green Revolution was kind of the beginning of that. And now I think that we're finding ways to farm without any of those chemicals, going back to the way that our great-great-great-grandparents were farming when none of this technology was even available, and connecting back to nature in that regard. So I think that although my father, I'm really proud to say that we're 4 generations of farming without herbicides. We've always taken a very high road and considered the land to not be ours, that we are here to protect and take care of the land for the next generation. So stewards of the land. And so I'm really proud that my grandfather and my father saw that early on, and that we're continuing that. But I think that the conversation is shifting less about malolactic and what forests your barrels are coming from and all that, and it's more talking about how are you farming. Let's talk about the vineyard. Site comes first in wine. Great wines come from great sites first. And then how do you honor that site? And really that's where the bulk majority of the work happens. And then once it arrives at the winery, of course, you need to have an incredible attention to detail and all that focus. But I think that we can thank my father's generation and my grandfather's generation for putting in a lot of work there, and making it a little bit clearer and easier for us to navigate those waters, if you will.
And this concept has been something, that has always resonated, right, since generations ago. And a lot of people are in the same mentality, but I believe, and I speak for a lot of us, that you're a real spokesperson for it. And you're not only just talking about it, but you're creating things. Let's talk about the tractor, for instance.
Yeah. No, it's crazy because when we sold our winery, I quickly learned about how other people are farming, because we had always had our own fruit, and I started looking at other vineyards. I also watched how the transition from my family's stewardship and farming hand and the new farming hand, because all the vineyards were around us, and I realized that not everyone farms at the level that we're farming. There's been this uptake. We think about herbicides and we think about chemicals and we think, oh, we're all beyond that. But no, we're really in the middle of it right now. And I learned, this is before all the lawsuits with Monsanto and all the Roundup and glyphosate lawsuits. But I learned about just how much was being sprayed. You always think about corn and soy, and you think about, all sorts of other crops. You don't think about vineyards. And I was shocked to see how many vineyards were, and it seemed to be growing this use. And so I went out and started the Monarch Challenge, which is actually this rosé. It was the Monarch Challenge rosé that we make a little bit to help promote the funds, to help kind of create the awareness for this problem that's happening in farming, which is just the gross use of herbicides, and it's totally unneeded. It has nothing to do with quality, and it is something that is replacing the hard work that really takes to take away weeds. It's a lot of labor. And I quickly realized, going and talking to farmers and saying, hey, did you realize that Roundup and glyphosate's connected to these awful things in the environment, human health, and so on and so forth? They would say, I had no idea, but I have to put food on the table for my family. I've got to put my kids through college. There was this economic gap that divided basically farming organically or without chemicals at that level and conventional farming. And I said, we have to find a way to bridge this gap. And with the incredible technology that so many automotive companies are pursuing, from Google with Waymo and Tesla and et cetera, if you can drive a Tesla down the freeway at 70 miles per hour and have it change lanes, I knew that you could certainly figure out a way to go 2 and 3 miles per hour down a tractor row or a vineyard row, and farm. And so we started. I partnered up with 3 brilliant engineers out of Silicon Valley, really incredible individuals, and we formed a company called Monarch Tractor, and it's an electric tractor. It's a smart tractor, and it has the ability to farm autonomously. And the reason why this is important is because a lot of these passes are incredibly slow. They are incredibly expensive. And so by having this autonomy piece, the farmer that would normally have to be sitting there driving the tractor can be in the field working with other parts of the vineyard and doing actually passes that uses their entire extent of their abilities versus just sitting there in the tractor. So the tractor will allow for us to farm organically, regeneratively, biodynamically, any of the really beautiful niche farming practices without the economic impact that you'd otherwise have, and without the carbon footprint. Because farming organically does take more to farm, and so your carbon footprint, because you're spending more diesel, goes up. And so that's always been the argument between conventional and organic farming. Conventional farmers would say, yeah, but your carbon footprint's massive, and that's terrible for the environment, and they were right. And so this whole Monarch Tractor kind of electric, smart, and autonomous package allows for us to accomplish everything and really be able to farm at a high level without the impact.
Is it already in the market?
Part of it, it's been an amazing journey so far. Long answer, sorry.
That's
no,
perfect. Is it already in the market?
Amazing.
Thank you. It's gonna excite. I can't wait to show you guys. Actually, when we have this tractor up in, well, actually, it's on its way up to Napa today. But when it's up next time with the group, I'd love to show you guys in person. It's an incredible piece of machinery. Unbelievable.
Yeah, I think Eduardo was trying to ask if it's on the market, is it available for sale? And I was wondering how many wineries were actually implementing it or planning on implementing it if and when it is released.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, thanks, Amanda. It's a great question. In the wine business, you go to trade shows, you taste wine, you never know what the results of pouring 12 bottles worth of wine in a tasting lead to. So I was kind of a little bit hesitant in doing, and they're exhausting, as you guys know. And I was a little bit hesitant. We did Unified Wine and Grape Symposium, so 2 days there, and we did the World Ag Expo, where we got one of the top 10 new products innovations of the year, which was amazing.
Congratulations!
Big award for us, and one of the first big ones. And within those 5 days, so 2 days at Unified and 3 days at World Ag Expo, we basically pre-sold all of our initial tractors. So we had over 500 people sign NDAs because we still haven't unveiled the tractor. So we had it intended. People would sign a non-disclosure agreement to come in to see it, and then a personal walkthrough with our team. And we sold over 300 tractors, and which is basically our first year's allocation of tractors, and then had over 500 people sign NDAs. So it was madly successful, and made me think twice about those tastings we do, because I think they are. But certainly for tractors, it was amazing. It's a whole new world for me, by the way, and I really enjoy the engineering side of it, and it's been incredible watching my 3 co-founders and now our team, which has grown quite beautifully, operate what we're doing. It's exciting times.
Yeah. I wonder, Carlo, as you are navigating this landscape and coming from a family of deep generations of farming and winemaking, how are you being informed about what's going on as far as farming, whether it's regenerative farming or farming without chemicals? What are the resources that you're using to compile this information and make informed decisions, not only in your farming, but then also with the Monarch and future technology?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's also I feel really fortunate to have been brought up in Napa, Sonoma, Northern California, because we have such a strong community. And we are all talking to each other, and we are all friends for the most part. And so being able to just, catch up with friends at the coffee line at Oxbow Market, or call people and say, hey, are you seeing this? I think the biggest database that I know from season to season and vintage to vintage is just our community, is the fellow farmers that we farm alongside. And then beyond that, of course, keeping in touch with research at UC Davis and a number of the different universities internationally, and just trying to, I'm on winebusiness.com. That's when I open my computer, that's what pops up, and there's always studies coming through and all that. And so I think we have such a great community. I learn from all of you, from the sommelier community, from the restaurant community, our greater community, because we're all interconnected through farming and through wine. Oh, did you hear this winery is farming in this way? And then you can kind of research it and look into it. Because the beautiful thing is that I don't think anyone's so dogmatic to farm exactly to the T any one of these, because it's kind of any biodynamic. It's perfectly biodynamic. If you follow every step, it's not going to suit your farm perfectly. Every farm's different. So having that community, that ability to bounce ideas off of each other and talk through things is a wonderful thing. And we're really fortunate to have that. It's not like that in all wine regions around the world, and we're really fortunate to have that. I think that's part of the new world mentality is sharing. I should say also they're very good here in Italy. I'm not trying to say that we're better.
As far as community and talking and communicating.
Yeah, my girlfriend and her sister, so Giovanna and Serena, they have a community of friends here that I've been able to become friends with, and it's funny because you drive a few hours and you're in France and then you're in Burgundy, and so there's a tight knit community between Piemonte and Burgundy and Champagne as well, and so there's a lot of cross pollination of farming practices within those 3 regions, and then of course within the sub regions within Italy and so on. So it's interesting to see what wine regions travel to other wine regions. And we always see after harvest here in Piemonte, people from Burgundy, because it's the same thing. Burgundy is going through aeration right now, just like we are on the Sonoma Coast. And so everyone kind of comes to Piemonte afterwards to not just enjoy the wines, but also the white truffles. But it's that cross-pollination of farming and kind of goes, and then of course we have many winemakers come here from California and from Italy back and forth. So there's a great deal of sharing. The world is a smaller place now, and because of these abilities to get on and FaceTime with people from all around the world, it continues to shrink. And for the better, I think. We continue to elevate our farming practices, which is important.
It's funny you say that because I think of Napa Valley in the 60s, and I talk a lot about the sharing economy that existed then, and that being such a big major player in the success of Napa Valley, and your grandfather really being at the helm of that, making sure that information was shared, and it was, very much a you help me, I'll help you. There are no like real secrets in this valley. So I'm glad to see that has continued generationally, and you continue to be a proponent of that. And then also, if I may, to your point earlier about not being so wrapped up in the winemaking and really having an added focus on the farming, the viticulture side of things, I think you're spot on with that. And I think, from my standpoint, and I'm sure Eduardo's, as professionals, that is the place that we're looking right now to see the difference between wine to wine. It's no surprise to me that you are a lover of Burgundy and Piemonte. These wines are just so ethereal and definitely California, and we love that. But there is something lifted and bright and fresh. And is it an inspiration for you? I imagine it has to be, right?
Yeah, I mean, those two, Burgundy and Piemonte, have always been massive inspirations for me. And wines of elegance, wines that, one thing that Dante and I said when we began this is we wanted to make a wine that was in balance, that all the way through fermentation and all the different steps that we wouldn't have to intervene. We wanted a wine essentially that would naturally come together beautifully in the fermenting vessel and make the job as smoothly as so. That comes down to the pick decisions for us, and of course our farming practices. But and I do think that it's important to say that the generation before us did make so many big sacrifices and spending time in the lab and in the cellar that made our ability now to understand navigating fermentation and barrel aging and bottling, all of these things so much easier. And so our attention really can be focused more on the farming and be progressive there. And once we get to the cellar, we are following in the footprints, the path that the previous generation has paved for us. And it makes, we're fortunate, I think, now and to make wines that are better than ever. I'm not just saying from my brother and my perspective. We have big shoes to fill with my grandfather and my father, and there's just wines that will, that's impossible to say. But I do think that what they've allowed for us to do is to continue to elevate wine and continue to connect back to the land and make wines that continue to rise. Yeah. My father will say it now. I think it's hard to say because his wines from the 70s, 80s, and 90s are just so beautiful. But he feels that he continues to elevate everything, just given everything he's learned, and continues to progress. So it's exciting times right now for us in food and wine. I think we're seeing it in food too. The food just keeps getting better and better and better, and the wine pairings just keep getting better and better. So it's exciting times for us as humanity.
And talking about another thing. If I may, they say it takes a lot of beer to make good wine. And I wanted to touch on a little bit about your project, Sons, with Elliot and Jacob. And that is an amazing beer that ever since you guys came out with it, about 3-4 years ago, maybe a little more, huh?
Yeah, we came out with that, 4 years ago. And that's a partnership with Elliot Taylor, who's an incredible musician and a dear friend, and Jacob Bush, a dear friend and an incredible brewer. His family's been brewing for a long time. And we all like Pilsner. We just felt that there wasn't a Pilsner there are a number of wonderful Pilsners, but we wanted to focus on a Pilsner. And Jacob's family, having been in beer for as long as they had sold their brewery. And we just came together organically and said, hey, let's make a Pilsner. And it's been fun. Elliot runs the whole show. Jacob helps out a tremendous amount. And it's been a lot of fun to be a part of. And yeah,
it's exploded in the last few years.
Yeah, and thank you. You were, I think, one of back when you were running everything at Morimoto. I think you were our first account and remain on
Oh,
draft.
it was a no-brainer. It's
Love.
delicious. Yeah, it's one of those beers you crave all the time.
Thank you, Eduardo, and that means a lot because I know, you putting us on draft there was a big deal at Morimoto. So thanks for that support. Appreciate it.
As far as your distribution, are you guys throughout the U.S. now, or stay a couple states, or still California?
No, Sons is just in Northern California. We get asked a lot. Brewing's the opposite of wine. It doesn't get better with age, at least most beers. And so it's meant to be crisp and fresh, and so it's really just quite local right now. We do get asks or requests for the beer, and we just say, come to Sonoma, come to Napa, a couple spots in San Francisco. Yeah.
It's like Yingling Lager in the East Coast, right? Only in the East Coast.
Yeah. Yep.
Right, exactly. Pennsylvania, born and raised.
I know.
That was the beer my dad used to have to travel from. We grew up outside of Philadelphia, but when he was a kid, he would just go to, I don't even know where it was. It was somewhere in Central PA that he would drive to get some Yingling. But I'm curious. I'm a beer lover. Unfortunately, most of the bars I think in Northern California are still closed. But 2 questions: 1, have you been to Ernie's Tin Bar? And 2, is the beer on tap there?
So I've been to Ernie's Tin Barn. I love it. It's amazing. It's iconic for a very cold beer. I love that you can't use your cell phone or any of that stuff. I love spots.
Or a real bathroom.
Yeah, and it's kind of in the middle of nowhere and kind of on a
Peanuts
little bit of a, yeah. And I know we tasted them on the beer. I'm not sure if they have the beer. I know they've had it on rotation once before, but I'm not sure if it's there right now, to be honest. We actually, this whole COVID thing, we stopped brewing for a little while, and then we started brewing again, and then the second wave has hit, and so we've stopped again for the moment because it's a month and a half, so it's lovely beer. It doesn't take nearly as long to mature and to come about. It's not at all like wine in so many ways, but they're both lovely. But so we've been kind of in a little bit of a quiet phase right now, and hopefully when things reopen, we'll be brewing at full steam ahead. We'll see.
Yeah, Ernies, for those of you who are watching who are like, what are these guys talking about? Literally, you'd pass by it a million times and never know it's there, but it is one of the most iconic and it's my favorite bar on the planet. And it really is it's a garage. It's an old car garage. They actually still have cars in there. There's actual taxidermy on the wall. There's a rotary phone with a phone book. I mean, it is as old school as it gets. But they also happen to have one of the best beer selections I've ever seen in my life. And you'd never know it because to walk in there, you're like, what is this dive bar? But it's amazing.
And they're ice cold beers, and they're delicious. Yeah,
yes. Their bartenders are amazing. Yeah. No, impeccable selection. What's going on in the vineyard? It is late July. I assume, you've mentioned Raen is happening over in Sonoma. So tell us about what you're seeing there. I mean, obviously you're in Italy, but I'm sure you're getting some intel.
Yeah, we're just starting to purple up. They're just beginning. For example, Royal St. Robert, the upper block, just has a couple light purple berries on some of the bunches and some of the kind of more warm areas. Bodega is still all green, and Seafield out in Fort Ross Seaview is starting to get a little bit of color. And I'm coming home here soon. It's been crazy traveling during this time, and I feel fortunate that I have been able to get out here for this because we are having a little bit of variation here now as well. It's an early season on the Sonoma Coast. And so we're looking like harvest will probably be the first week of September, last week of August even maybe. And even in, and I found that, I don't know, 18 was such a stellar year, just how it ripened so late and everything happened so late, and the retention of acidity and the freshness and the vibrancy and all of that. But I also find that years when harvest comes a little early, it's kind of a blessing in disguise because mildew pressure and a lot of the challenges that come with late harvests are gonna be easy to navigate. And so I'm super excited for this vintage right now. I think that given the yields, all of our vineyards are going through this incredible regeneration kind of renaissance, because when we first began Raen, we converted everything on the farm to a cross between permaculture, biodynamic, and organic. So permaculture is that farming practice where basically the farm itself permanently sustains itself. So if you have a problem, you find something within the farm or a plant that you can bring to the farm, or for example, like bobcats to help with gopher problems, or beneficial flowers that bring beneficial insects to take out the bad. And so you're fighting nature with nature. That's permaculture, and we start there. And then if we can't find a permaculture remedy, we go to a biodynamic remedy. If we can't find a biodynamic remedy, we base that on an organic path. And we are a regenerative farm, so we do not till. But the vines, it takes a long time for them to kind of shed their previous farming past behind them. And I think one of the great things is that Raen, all the vines are mature. So we did inherit these vines from farming families before. And so they've been going through this struggle the last couple of years to find their roots again, to where all the microbiome of the soils are becoming really active and alive, and that changes really the whole entire dynamic of the vine. And right now, we're starting to see the vines happier than ever. The canopies are incredibly full. It's been a wonderful regeneration, if you will, in the farm.
What's your average age of the vines?
What's that?
What's the average age of the vines in, like, let's say, Royal St. Robert?
Yeah, Royal St. Robert is 20 years. So we basically, all of our vines I say they're mature for California. We're all in clay. We have that clay kind of base soil. So we have phylloxera has swept through the vineyards that we're in. And so, except for Charles Ranch, which is actually planted to AXR, some AXR and St. George rootstock. So phylloxera, which is that little louse that kills the vine, that attacks the roots, and swept through Napa and Sonoma and California in the 80s and 90s, and most vines were planted. So most old vines, unless they're in sandy soils where phylloxera has a more difficult time existing, and so you don't see phylloxera. You see these vines in sandy soils from the 1890s, and that Morgan and Tegan Pasalacqua and all those guys are working with that are super cool, but they're in sandy soils. And so our vines, most of the vines that Raen works with, were planted in the late 90s. And that's kind of the gathering of our holdings, 99.
So you're a sure place as far as age goes, and getting beautiful fruit and generous. It's pretty ideal.
Yeah, and they're still young and healthy, the vines, and so we can kind of change the farming practices. I think that you have to do everything gradually with vineyards. They're just like people. You can't just change 180 degrees right away. You have to ease, like if you're going to dry farm, you can't just go from irrigating to dry farming immediately. You have to slowly make sure that the roots are there to support that practice. And so we're kind of following that same philosophy, and we have been, and it's been amazing to see the vineyards really coming to life and more beautiful than ever. It's awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah. And it's actually not. I have to say that some vines did shut down during that crossover. Some vines did shut down and not make it through. So it's not 100% easy, but the vines that did make it through are incredible right now.
It's worth it. Yeah.
What are you pushing for next? I mean, do you feel like you're there, or are there next steps as far as farming goes?
Yeah, no, I feel like the size that we're at and what we're doing is perfect for our team. We're 18.5 acres. We're a 5-person team. It's perfect. I love everything about where we are with wine. It's the perfect amount of wine that, between Melanie McIntyre, who's our assistant winemaker, my brother Dante, and I, we can do basically everything with interns coming in to help during the harvest. But we're the perfect size. I love it. It's really manageable, and it's been a lot of fun to work. So we're just continuing to elevate the farms or the vineyards and the wines. But dialing everything, I think we don't plan to grow unless something absolutely magical comes along, which never say never. But for now, focused at the highest level.
As far as
I do want to say that our goal is to really. I think that we're so fortunate on the Sonoma Coast that we do have the ability with some of these sites to make Pinot Noir that can sit alongside the best Pinot Noirs of the world, and we do that in blind settings every year with our team for our holiday party. We blind Raen with some of our favorite Burgundy houses, and never ever to say that we're better, but always to show the team that we can sit alongside some of these great wines of the world. And being that we're a whole cluster house, we every now and then we'll float in even Romanée-Conti or Loire, some of these wonderful aromatic, beautiful, elegant wines that are such inspirations. And it's awesome to see blind, because that's what my grandfather people told my grandfather he was crazy when he began Robert Mondavi, and his goal was to prove that we can make wines that can sit with the great wines of the world. And they said, "Good luck, you're crazy." And he went out in the market with his first vintage. And no sales, because it was like $2.50 a bottle, and he was in Chicago. I remember him telling me a story, and he came home defeated, and he said, I went out and showed the wines, and no one was interested. So he started rethinking things, and he went back into the market with 3 bottles in brown bags, and tasting with the sommeliers, restaurateurs, chefs, and all that, and said, try these 3 wines and tell me what you think of them. And they would taste the wines, and they would say, well, I really quite like this one. And I have to say that there's a good reason for that. By the way, check this little. This is our little permanent. But what he was doing was he was going through, and so try these wines, talk about them, and then he would unveil that oftentimes the wine that they preferred was his Robert Mondavi bottling, and then he would blind with Romanée-Conti back then, and when he was doing Cabernet with first growths, and he would reveal the wines. It was back when a bottle of, I think, Romanée-Conti was like $10, and Mouton was $10, $6, $8 type of thing, and he would reveal the wines, and it was never again to show that his wines were better, but it was to show that he could sit with the great wines of the world. And at the time, he had innovated quite a bit. He was the first one to use stainless steel in winemaking because we didn't understand microbiology very well, and all the old wood barrels had all sorts of microbial problems. And so he pioneered stainless steel from the milk industry. And then clean barrels, so new barrels, because again, we didn't understand microbiology very well. So he used all new barrels for the best wines. So that gave a blank canvas, clean slate. Now we understand microbiology better, and we don't want all the aldehydes from the barrels, so like vanillin and all that can mask terroir. So we're now able to get even closer in wine. So like Raen, for example, I consider all of the bottlings that we make, all 3 of the Pinot Noirs, to be, Grand Crus for us. We treat them all the same at the highest level, and we have 10% new barrel. And the 10% new barrel is just to keep our barrel program alive. And it's to allow the terroir to shine through, so that Pinot Noir being delicate and ethereal, if we had 100% new oak on it, you would just taste the vanilla, all those aldehydes. Yeah, and you're just tasting the oak. And now we understand microbiology better, and so we're able to clean the barrels even at a higher. We're able to basically have very clean old barrels and know it from a scientific standpoint. And by doing this, we're able to have wines of incredible purity and get closer to terroir, which was his goal and what he was doing back in the 60s when he was blinding his wines, because the fermentations were cleaner and then the vessel was cleaner at the time. And so new oak was a chance for purity, and now too much new oak is taking us away from purity. So we've kind of come full circle on that, on the winemaking side, which is pretty exciting.
That's crazy. You've enjoyed a great amount of success as I mean, hopefully you feel that from a financial perspective in your own company, but from my perspective, from where I sit, the wines are recognized, they're allocated, people consider them, truly benchmarks now, I think, for Sonoma Coast. But what were some of your first days like, and were they similar to that of your grandfathers or even your fathers?
Yeah, I mean, the first days, I think starting a winery is such a major deal. I mean, I dreamt of making wine on the Sonoma Coast for 10 years before we were able to secure the vineyards that we're in. it takes so much time and so much energy. And now that we finally are kind of hitting our stride, we're really well rooted in our vineyards. We really have our team as good as it gets right now. I'm so happy with our team. It takes time to get there, and I think that I've talked to my father about this. A lot of the most difficult times that my family has had, prohibition putting us out of business, repeal put us out of business again. And then my grandfather being asked to leave Charles Krug by his family and the board. Every time you fall down and you get up. So in 65, he left Krug. In 66, he began Robert Mondavi. In 04, we sold Robert Mondavi. We didn't want to sell. It was a very hard thing for my family. It was probably the hardest year for my father and my grandfather that I've ever seen. And, you fall down and get back up, and we're better for it. And so I think that anytime you start something, the struggle is real. It takes every bit that you have, but if you really love what you do, you have fun doing it. And so beginning Raen has been and working with my brother has been absolutely awesome. It's been one of the most amazing experiences in my life, but it's been tough. I mean, talking about COVID, we're 90% in restaurants. We were leading up to this whole situation, and all of our friends had to close, and basically we watched our sales go like off of a cliff. And so we've pivoted, and the first little bit of wine that we sold, we were able to contribute to the Restaurant Community Foundation, and now we've been able to find a way. But it's been a journey, and I really hope we get through this whole COVID situation here soon, because it breaks my heart to watch what's happened to the restaurant world and our extended family. And so, but yeah, it's a never-ending adventure. I'll say that, to say the least.
Absolutely.
There is a light at the end of this tunnel. I know there is.
Mm-hmm. Of course. Well, we so appreciate you sharing that adventure with us. And, like all struggles, they generally have silver linings. We hope that, we all gain something, we all learn something and gather some insight from them. So I'm sure this will be no different. And, until we can meet in a restaurant and have some rain and have some suns, I wish you a wonderful rest of your trip in Italy. I think one of the silver linings is that there is maybe a little bit more rain to go around for consumers who weren't buying in restaurants. So maybe that's a silver lining. And I think Wine Access has some as well. So thank you so much for joining us. Eduardo, any closing remarks?
No, I just want to say thank you both for taking the time. You in Florida, Carlo over there, all the way from the beautiful Piemonte. Can't wait to try those wines. A big hug to Giovanna and the family, and see you here soon. Thank you, guys.
Yeah,
and hi to the kitty. Thank you for the cute little furry friend on there.
She keeps jumping up. She's a rescue, actually, which is a crazy story with this little one. But I just want to thank you guys, and thank you for telling our story and sharing our wines, and for supporting the wines with Wine Access. It means a lot to us, and we look forward to definitely clinking glasses very soon once this whole thing clears. So thank you guys.
Can't wait.
The pleasure is ours.
Amazing art, and talk to you soon.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. Thanks, Amanda. Take care.
Thank you, brother.